In episode 38 of the CySec101 training series, we are going to go through SQLMap, the basics of SQLMap, which helps us do SQL injection because obviously we are still in the OffSec tooling, the offensive security tooling portion of the cybersecurity 101 pathway of TryHackMe. And SQLMap and SQL injection are one of the top the OWASP top 10 vulnerability exploits that still exist, and I think they're still going to exist as we go into the 2025 version of OWASP, the OWASP top 10 list. So this is a big one. This is a very important one. This is the last room in the offensive security tooling module of the cybersecurity 101 pathway of TryHackMe. And as a part of this, we're going to obviously go through the intro. It's just a few tasks. It's nothing crazy. There's the SQL injection vulnerability that we're just going to go over so that you know what it actually is. Then the automated SQL injection tool, which is SQLMap. And then, of course, we're going to do the practical exercise. And that'll be it for today's video. So without further ado, if you'd like to support the channel, consider joining Hackaholics Anonymous, the premier community for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below. You can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. Now, without further ado, let us jump into the SQLMap room. SQL injection has been a big concept in cybersecurity essentially ever since databases have been around. SQL injection attacks have also been around, and they're a big topic in cybersecurity because you can access so much sensitive data. You can access your customers' usernames and passwords. Obviously, if they have their credit card information on file with you, you can access that. There is so much data that leaves a business at risk that if they actually do get hacked, there's a really big liability that is available, that if I steal, your customer data, you are now bound to get sued. You're now bound to get fined by whatever regulatory environments that's actually a part of your compliance. There's so much stuff that goes on that is stored inside of a database. So we need to first understand what an actual database is. And we did the introduction to SQL as a part of the CySec101 training series. So if you're actually in this playlist on YouTube right now, you can actually go to the SQL introduction and see what that is. And we do a good amount of practical exercises in that video as well. So at the very least, you'll have a really good understanding of that. But I'm just going to give you kind of like a crash course, a real quick overview of what the SQL databases are. So SQL stands for the Structured Query Language, and it's essentially a way that we communicate with a database. It's the programming language for storing and processing information in something called a relational database. And this is how essentially databases can kind of compile information together, so you can have multiple databases that pull data from each one, and then you can combine the information of those databases to create like a full profile for a customer. So therefore, there's a relationship that is established between various databases. So a relational database stores information in tabular form with rows and columns representing different data attributes and the various relationships between those data values. And you can use SQL statements to store, update, remove, search, and retrieve information from the database. And you can also use SQL to maintain and optimize database performance. So that's what SQL specifically is. Now, a database is a collection of data that can be stored, modified, retrieved, and it stores data from several applications in a structured format, hence the name Structured Query Language, which makes storage, modification, and retrieval easy and efficient. You can interact with websites daily, and you probably do, and the website contains some of the web pages where user input is required. So for example, if a login page is there and it asks you to enter your credentials, once you enter them, it checks if those credentials are actually in their database, and if they're correct, then it'll log you in. So many users log into that website, and how that website records all these users' data and verify it during the authentication process is the key question. And this is all done with the help of a database. So The websites have databases that store user and other information, and they are retrieved when they're needed. So when you enter your credentials to a website's login page, the websites interact with its database to check to see if those credentials exist and if they are correct. And if they are, you get access. So if you have an input field to search for something, for instance, the input field of a bookstop website or a bookshop website, allows you to search for the available books for sale. And when you search for any book, the website will interact with the database of that library or of that bookshop to fetch the record of that book and then display it on the site for you. So now that we know that the website asks the database to retrieve, store, and modify data, so how does this interaction actually take place? And this is done through the database management system. And there's MySQL, there's PostgreSQL, SQLite or SQLite, Microsoft SQL Server. There are also a variety of different ones as well, MariaDB and things like that. So these systems understand the SQL, the structured query language. So any application or website that uses SQL queries when interacting with a database. That's kind of the gist of this. So if there's a database, the application or the website uses SQL queries to interact with that database. So a user will send some kind of a request to the web server. The web server will check the database server and it will use the SQL language to do so. And then from there, it'll pull back the data. So in this particular case, let me see if I can zoom in on this. I can't. So essentially, you send some kind of a request and then the web server will send an SQL query. So, it's trying to access something right here. And then it says select everything from users where ID equals 1, which would presumably be the ID of the user. And then that was a query that you saw, that select asterisk from users. That's a very common syntax that we see inside of SQL. So this room will teach us the basics of SQL injection and how to use automated tools to carry out SQL injection. It will also dive practically into the topic through a hands-on challenge, and that's the part of the whole thing that we're going to go through. So we're going to talk about SQL injection vulnerability and then hunting SQL injection through the SQLMap tool. And then, of course, we're going to go through that practice exercise. So while having a solid SQL fundamental knowledge is helpful, it's not required to complete this room. And in case you're just interested in it, there is the intro to SQL, the SQL fundamentals room or video that's a part of the CySec101 playlist that you're in right now, and it was under our web hacking portion, but it's inside of the CySec101 playlist. And this piece, all of these things that you see right here with these check marks right here, I've already done this. It's already inside of the CySec101 playlist. So in case you're interested and you want a really strong foundation, which I think you should get because it's just a really, really important knowledge base. So if you complete this room, and then you want to go and get a solid foundation anyway, you can just go through that fundamentals room and you will be great. You'll be solid. So which language builds the interaction between a website and its database? And it's 3 letters, SQL. And that is our first question for the day. So let us now go into the concept of the SQL injection vulnerability. So now that we understand what SQL is, we understand what a database is, we're going to talk about this specific vulnerability, which is a really big vulnerability if you actually find it on a website. And of course, there's a note here that it says, before we proceed, please ensure that you try the manual or automated SQL injection methods only after you actually have permission from the application owner, because when you do penetration testing or any kind of hacking without the permission of the owner, that is actually a felony. So apart from doing damage because for whatever reason, maybe you're not fully well read into this and you may just do some things that may actually cause harm to that business or that website. Apart from that, there's also the fact that it's illegal, and then if it tracks back to you, which most likely they can because it's a part of their job to do digital forensics and to do the investigations to find the IP address and then the location and all of that. It's a pretty big deal. And if they catch you or when they catch you, you'll be in a whole lot of trouble. So let's take an example of a login page that asks you to enter the username and password. And so we have username John, password is this, right? Once you enter the username and password, the website will receive it and then it'll make an SQL query with your credentials and then send it to the database. And so this is the SQL query. It says select everything. So this asterisk represents anything and everything, right? It's a wildcard character. So usually in programming languages, it just represents anything, right? So select anything or everything from the user's database or the user's table, we should call it, where the username equals John and the password equals da 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 da. And then you have to put that semicolon at the end, otherwise the query will not work. So that's what the that's what the website sends, where it's checking the actual users table, and it's checking the entry where the username is John and the password is this. So that and is the operator that requires both of these conditions have to be true in order for this to work. Now, if there is no username John, it's going to say, login credential incorrect. If the password is incorrect by a single character or some kind of a, the U is lowercase instead of uppercase, whatever, then it'll say login credentials incorrect. So when you say username and password, that means that both of those conditions have to be true in order for this person to be able to log into the website. So it'll be executed in the database, this query right here. And as per this query, the database will check for the username John and the password of that. If it finds such a user, it will return the user's detail to the application. And the above query will be successful only if the given username and pass both have a match together in the database, as they're separated by the Boolean and, also known as an operator. Sometimes when input is improperly sanitized, meaning that the user input is not validated, and it could be either through your browser on the host level, the client level, or it could be on the server level from the actual website. In either of those situations, there could be a lack of sanitization, or where there's no validation taking place. Attackers can actually manipulate the input and write a SQL query that would get executed in the database and then perform whatever the action is that we want to pull. So SQL injection has a very harmful effect in this digital world, as all of the organizations store their data, including their critical information, inside databases, and a successful SQL injection attack can compromise their critical data. So let's assume the website login page we discussed above lacks input validation and sanitization. This means that it is vulnerable to the SQL injection, and the attacker does not know the password of the user John. They will type the following input in the given fields. They'll say user John, and then password, it'll be ABC, and then there's a single quote, or 1 equals 1, and then you have that semicolon at the end, and then we have these series of dashes. So this is truly an injection attack. Now, the way that this breaks down, right? So they put some kind of a random string first, and then they have this quote, space, or 1 equals 1. And 1 equals 1 will always yield true, right? So that's the thing. So it's like either this is the case, right? So this is the password, or 1 equals 1. And the SQL database is going to look at that, and it's going to say, okay, this is not true, but this part is true. 1 does equal 1. And so that will actually yield true. And since it says or, it'll say either this one is true or this one is true. And if either of those is true, then give me access, right? So username is John, password is not going to be correct, but this condition will actually be correct, right? So the SQL query that actually the website would send to the database would be very similar to what we had before. And then the password portion changes a little bit. And it says password equals, notice that the first quotation is not something that we put here because the website, the server, is actually going to do that for us. And then the second portion of it includes that closing quotation, which is something that we need to actually put. And then or 1 equals 1, and then semicolon. And then we have these couple of dashes right here that also is wrapped with that one single quote that is available over there. And then there's a semicolon. So this is what the web server actually creates for us, right? So this is the query that the web server creates. So notice that there are a few pieces that we didn't include that at the end of it, the web server actually did include and it created. So let's actually break this down and look at the details. So it looks similar to the previous query, but now we actually have another condition, which is that is included with the operator of or. So this will see if there is a user John, and then it'll check if John has password ABC, which obviously he doesn't. Ideally, the query should fail here because it expects both the username and password to be correct, as there is an AND operator between them. But this query has another condition, which is the OR operator between the password and the statement 1 equals 1. And any one of those things being true will make the whole SQL query successful. So the password failed, obviously, because it's just a random password. So the query will check the next condition, which is if 1 equals 1. As we know, 1 does equal 1. So 1 equals 1 is actually going to be a true statement. So it's going to ignore the random password entered before it, and it'll consider the statement as true, which will successfully execute the query, which is the actual query that we have, meaning pulling John's information. Now the dashes, right? So the dash dash space dash at the end of the query would comment anything after 1 equals 1, which means that the query would be successfully executed and the attacker would get logged into John's account. So anything that comes after that 1 equals 1 just becomes commented, meaning that it's not a part of the code. It will not execute as code. When you comment something in any language, that means you are essentially nullifying whatever comes after that. So one of the most important things to note is that there's the use of a single quote after ABC, and without the single quote, the whole string right here would be considered the password, which is not intended. However, if we add a single quote after ABC, the password would then look like this, which is what we saw in the actual query itself. And then or 1 equals 1, and then we have the semicolon, and then we have these 3 dashes followed by another quote which then encloses the original string ABC in the query and allows us to introduce a logical condition, which is or 1 equals 1, which is always going to end up being true, right? So 1 will always equal to 1, therefore that will end up being true, and even if the password is incorrect. So even if we just put random jargon as the password and this ends up being false, 1 will always equal 1. So if we say this or this, that means if either of these conditions is true, let me in, right? Allow this query to actually be successful, which ends up working. So which Boolean operator checks if at least one side of the operator is true for the condition to be true? And that, my friends, is OR. And then do we have another one? Is 1 equal 1 in an SQL query always true? And of course, the answer to that is yeah, because 1 always will equal 1. All right, so now we can actually talk about the automated SQL injection tool. So we know what SQL injection is, we know what a database is, we know what SQL language is. So now there's an actual injection tool that we're going to talk about. As we already established, SQL injection involves actually discovering the SQL injection vulnerability in an application and then manipulating that database. Manually doing all this can take a lot of time and effort because you would have to keep going with trial and error. So that's why hackers developed SQLMap, which is a free and open source penetration testing tool that automates finding and exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities on web applications. It can extract data from databases, execute commands on the underlying operating system, and even take control of the target server. Of course, there's a tool that has already been developed for something like this, right? So SQLMap is the automated tool for detecting and exploiting SQL injection vulnerabilities in web applications. It simplifies the process of identifying these vulnerabilities, and it's built into some Linux distros, but you can easily install it if you don't have it in your Linux distro. As this is a command line tool, you must open the Linux OS terminal and use it. The help command will list all the available flags that you can use. If you don't want to manually add the flags to each command, you can always use the wizard flag with SQLMap. When you use this flag, the tool will guide you through each step and ask questions to complete the scan, making this the perfect option for beginners. This is actually amazing that this even exists. This is the first time I've ever heard of this existing inside of a command line tool. You always see wizards inside of like an installation software or something like that. When you're using a GUI, like a graphical user interface, you'll always see some kind of a wizard that'll guide you, but I have never seen one inside of a command line tool, which is really freaking cool. Very, very convenient. So what do we got? We got SQLMap wizard as the command, and then this kind of launches right here. Text has been removed for whatever reason, so I guess maybe they don't want us to have it just in case they ask questions about it. And then it'll say, starting the wizard interface, please enter the full target URL, which is the -u flag in this case. The -dbs flag, -dbs flag, helps you to extract all database names. Once you get to know the database names, you can extract information about the tables of that database by using capital D, database name, and then doing tables. After obtaining the tables, if you want to enumerate the records in those, you can do capital D database name, capital T table name, and then do dash dash dump, which will get you all of the fields, right? All of the columns and all of the records. And then the different flags in SQLMap let you extract detailed information from the database. Now we can take a practical scenario and use all of those above flags. So the first step is to look for a possible vulnerable URL or request. You may often come across some URLs that use the get parameters to retrieve data. So for example, a URL like http SQLMap testing.thm/search, and then the question mark with where like the query starts actually fitting into it. So the query in this possible case, or in this potential case, is the cat equals 1. That's our actual query. So it uses a parameter cat and then takes the value of 1. And if you see any web application using the get parameters in the URLs to retrieve data, you can test that URL with the U flag in SQLMap. And this is considered to be HTTP get-based testing. This approach is followed when the application uses the get parameters in the actual URL to retrieve data from the searches, which again has a lot to do with how they've configured their website. So if it shows you the request that's being made inside of the URL, that is misconfigured website. It's something that is leaving a vulnerability for that website to be exploited. So we'll use the supposedly vulnerable website URL, which is the http SQLMap testing.thm for demonstration. Suppose that this website has a search option, and when you click on the search option and search for something, the URL becomes this, and then you have search, and then this would be the aftermath of it. So this uses the get parameter, and then it gets the cat equals 1 in the URL to extract information from the database. As we know, URLs that have the get parameters can be vulnerable to SQL injection. So let us scan this URL to identify if it has any SQL injection vulnerability. So you'll do SQLMap, and then you feed it the URL, and you give it the full URL, including the query at the end of it. And then you run it, and it says testing connection, get parameter cat appears to be MySQL 5.0, and then cat is generic union legacy, and then parameter cat, boolean based, error based, and or time based, union query. The backend is MySQL web server operating system, . So the results above terminal show us that different types of SQL injection like boolean based blind, error-based, time-based blind, and union query are identified in the target URL. These are different techniques for exploiting an SQL injection vulnerability. For example, in the boolean-based blind SQL injection, the SQL query is modified, and a boolean expression that is always true, for example, 1 equals 1, is included in the query to extract the information, whereas the error-based SQL injection, some queries are intentionally modified to generate errors in the results sent by the database. These errors often contain valuable information about the data. Similarly, other SQL injection techniques can also be employed to exploit a database. So the results from that command that we executed on this particular target tells us that different types of SQL injection are possible in the URL. So let's use the flags, which we studied earlier, to exploit them and extract some valuable information. So we're going to use the DBS flag, and let's try it out. So we will do SQLMap U, and then we give it the full URL, and then we just do DBS to actually pull all of the databases. And so what do we get? We get the backend DBMS is MySQL web server operating system, and then we have available databases, users and members, right? So we get to see that we have these two various databases. So now we can select the user's database by using the capital D flag, and then use the tables flag at the end of that to extract all the tables for that database. So it looks just like this. The first portion is exactly the same. Then we have capital D users and then dash dash tables, and it pulls all of the tables for us. And then we see at the bottom right here, we have the John, Ath, Alexis, and Thomas. So we have 3 tables, and this is what they are named. So now that we have all the available table names of the database, let's dump the records. And for example, the Thomas table. So to do so, we'll define the database with the D flag, then the T flag will give us the actual table that we're going to use, and then we're going to use the dump flag to extract all the data. So again, the first portion of the query is going to look exactly the same, and then we'll do D users, T Thomas, and then we just do dump. And if we go to the bottom of this whole thing, we'll see that there is one entry for Thomas, and it's going to be the date, the name, and then the password for Thomas, which is the Thomas THM username, and then the password is testing. So unlike the URL used for testing above, you can also use the post-based testing where the application sends data in the request body instead of the URL. So examples of this could be login forms, registration forms, etc. To follow this approach, you must intercept a post request on the login or registration page and save it as a text file. You can use the following command to input the request that's saved in the text file to SQLMap. So SQLMap R and then read that intercepted request. And learning how to intercept and capture post requests is out of the scope for this room, and it can be done with a tool like Burp Suite, which is, we also have multiple videos in the CySec101 playlist that will actually teach you how to use Burp Suite. So in case you want to learn how to do that, you can just go watch those videos. I feel like we're not going to end up using it in this particular room in this video that we're going through, so I believe we're just going to use everything else that we've learned so far. So now it says, which flag in the SQLMap tool is used to extract all the databases that is available? So all of the databases that are available, and what we're going to do is going to be the, I think it's DBS, right? So --DBS is the flag. And then what would be the full command of SQLMap for extracting all tables from the members database? And the vulnerable URL is this. So we'll do, I'm just going to copy that. And then we're going to do SQLMap, and then we're going to do -u, and then we're going to paste the actual URL. Oops, I accidentally, there we go. We're going to paste the actual URL, and then it's going to be -d for the database, and then we're going to do members, and then we're going to do --dump, right? Vulnerable for extracting all tables from, oh no, so tables, not dump yet. So we want tables. So we're going to use database members and then --tables, and then we're going to pull all of the tables. And then once we have that, we would do --T, give the name of the table, and then take the dump to actually get all of the data from that table. So that is it. And now we can actually jump into our practical exercise. All right, so we actually get a little bit of an instruction for this practical exercise. Usually they just kind of throw us in the deep end here. So number one, I've already started the attack box. I've already started the virtual machine that's available for me. And I think, is this a free room? No, this is a subscriber only room. So you do actually need a paid subscription to TryHackMe, but there is a link in the description below that'll actually give you a discount on your TryHackMe subscription. So if you ever wanted to do it, you can definitely go ahead and use that link to actually get yourself a discount. Now, you can just do this against any website that you know and you have permission to be able to use SQLMap on. Maybe you have your own website that you can use some kind of like a little database installation on and just kind of mess around with it like that. But please don't do this if you don't have permission. It's always better to use a service like TryHackMe to be able to do all of these exercises in a controlled environment. So we are going to use the attack box for this. The web application that we want is assigned to us at this specific IP address, and then the endpoint is AI/login. When we go here, we'll see this web page, and we know based on the instructions that this is actually vulnerable to that injection exploit. So we saw that if we see a get parameter in the URL, they might be vulnerable to SQL injection, and we can copy that URL to use it with SQLMap. We also saw if that there's a post request and the data is sent inside the body rather than the URL, we can intercept the request and use it with SQLMap tool to exploit an SQL injection if there is any. Now, in this task on the login page, we have to use a get request, but the parameters of this request are not visible in the URL as they were on the previous task. So to test this with SQLMap, we need to first have the URL. And to be able to do this, we can just right click on the page and do the inspect option. And it's available pretty much in every browser. So right here, I'm using Chrome, and we're gonna end up using Firefox for this, but literally when you right click on anything, it'll just show you the inspect option. And then when you do that, it'll show you source code, right? So it'll literally show you what's available inside of this website's source code. So we see all of these things, and as we kind of scroll over any of them, it highlights those various elements of the page. And there's a lot of different extra categories or extra options when you actually do inspect, where you see different portions of that source code where you can kind of get different data. And there's even a console where you can inject JavaScript into it. Again, I'm kind of digressing, but inspect is one of your best tools for this, right? So from here, we have to select the network tab, and then we have to enter some test credentials and the username and password and click the login button, and then we'll be able to see the get request. So we can then click on that request and see the completed request with the parameters, and then we copy that URL and then use SQLMap to do it. So this is what it looks like when you actually have, when you've clicked on that and you've clicked on inspect. When you click on inspect, you go to the network section. This is specific to Firefox. So I wonder if I actually do this, if we also have a network section for Chrome. We do. We actually do have a network section for Chrome as well. And it also shows you all of the requests that are being made. So in my particular case, for example, TryHackMe, there's a lot of requests being made to TryHackMe, right? So in this case, when we actually do this, we go to the network tab and then we see that there's a request, right? So there's a status of 200. It's a get method and the domain name, which is the IP address, and then the file, which is this piece right here. But then we need the full URL. So if we actually go under the headers portion, you'll see that there's a get request being made, and this is the actual full URL. So it has the IP, AI, includes user login, which is the email, and then the user login, and then we have the email parameter having the value of test, and then we have the password parameter having the value of test. And then that's basically what it shows us right here. And so, I mean, it says that it's a successful, the 200 status is what we got, but I don't think test and test would actually log anybody in. So in this particular case, this is what the full URL ends up looking like. And so we run the commands that discussed in a previous task and answer the questions given in this task. Also remember to include the URL inside the single quotes. This is to avoid any errors with special characters in the terminal. For example, the question mark that we see here. And you may not get the results by the simple scan. Add the level 5 at the end of your commands to perform in-depth scans. Secondly, while running the commands, the tool may ask you some questions. Make sure to respond to them as follows. So it looks like the back end is DBMS is MySQL. Do you want to skip test payloads specific to the other ones? Yes or no, right? For the remaining tests, you want to include all the tests from MySQL scanning, and it will say yes. Injection not exploitable with null values. Do you want to try with a random integer value? And then you'll say yes. And get parameter email is vulnerable. Do you want to keep testing with others? And then you can say no, because I guess the email parameter itself is vulnerable. So they're they're giving us a lot of like instructions to actually make this work for us, which it's nice. It's nice to actually be able to do that. So I am going to first load the browser, and then from there, we'll just go through the exercise. All right, so here's the page, and this is the IP address /AI/login. And so if we do test, and then we do test, press enter, and it'll say what, like continue, and it'll say there was an error. And then so if I do inspect, let's see if we can actually go and find that. And then we're going to click on network, and then we're going to go down here. So if we can actually see any of this stuff to perform a request. Network filter URLs, let's see, HTML. Okay, got it. So first we actually had to click inspect and then get to the network tab and then do test, and then click login. And then so it'll say error, and then something actually showed up down here when I did that. And so now what I need to do is I need to go ahead and find this. So I'm going to actually go into full screen mode here, just so we can get a little bit better of a view that we have available over here. So the location was under the network tab, as they mentioned. And then when we look at it, there is the all, and then we have headers. So let me go ahead and click on all. And there it is. This is what we got over here. Under all, we have this piece, and then we can see that. And then I need headers now. So there we go. So if you actually click on the item, it'll bring this other portion where you see headers. And so this is how you would get the full URL. So that's actually our full URL. So I'm just going to copy this, and that will be what we will use for SQLMap. Now, we are going to actually go into SQLMap, and we're going to run the previous commands that we had over here just to kind of mess around and try to find something. So this is the URL. The full URL is what we're going to give it, and then we're just going to see if we can find any vulnerability. So I will do SQLMap -u and then paste and then just press enter. And there it goes. It starts running and it says testing connection to the target URL. You have not declared cookies. Do you want to use those? So I'll just say yes. Then it's going to say SQL map AI includes test, and it's been one logged. Do you want to use those? So command not found. Okay. Maybe it's because I didn't use an uppercase. Why? Maybe that's what it is. So let's do this one more time. Do you want to use those? We'll do an uppercase Y. Press enter. And it still said command not found. That's very interesting. So SQL map -u, and then we gave it the URL, and it's for whatever reason saying that our command was not found. So you've not declared cookies while server wants to set its own, which is this piece right here. Do you want to use those? And this is the actual command that they used. So that seems to be fine. They didn't have any other issues. And in the instructions that we had right here, did it give us anything about cookies? It says, do you want to skip payloads? Nope, it didn't even. Oh, you know what? I should have actually did the dash level 5. So that's the one piece that I did not do. So let's try that one more time. And then we're just going to do level equals 5. Press enter. And let's see what we have. So it says still the same thing with the cookies. We'll do yes. And it still says command not found. So this is actually getting annoying now. All right, so based on the hint, it's saying to just jump into it by using the DBS flag and then go to level 5 for extracting all of the available databases. So we're assuming that we actually have the vulnerability, and it tells us that the email parameter is vulnerable. So I guess we're literally just going to jump into it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use the portion or that one command where it actually starts kind of digging into the databases, which is what we see right here, right? So I'll literally just do this. I'll go level 5, and then I'll do DBS, and then we'll run it. And let's see, it says declared cookies. And let's see if it still gives me the same issue. So we'll do yes, and the freaking thing has stopped. So this is what's really, really obnoxious now, because for whatever reason, this is actually not working. So let me just do, I'll do DBS first, and then I'll do level equals 5, and then run it like that. And do you want to use that? And it's still giving me this issue with testing connection, and then you haven't declared cookies. So how about this? We'll do this time, and then we'll just say, no, I don't want to declare cookies. And it still stops it. So now I have to do some real troubleshooting here. All right, so there's something else that I also ended up missing, which is putting the URL inside of the quotes, which I did not do. So I will go ahead and do that one more time, and I believe maybe that might be my issue. So we'll go ahead and paste the URL inside of those single quotes. Then we'll do DBS, and then we'll do level equals 5. Then press enter. And look at that. Wouldn't you know, it actually started working. So it was a very silly mistake of not including the freaking URL inside of the quotes. Okay, so now we actually have another question here. So it says, do you want to skip the test payloads specific for other DMSs because it looks like the backend DMS MySQL heuristic extend test could be MySQL. It looks like the backend Do you want to skip test payloads for other ones? So we'll do yes. And it says for the remaining tests, do you want to include all tests for MySQL extending provided risk? We'll do yes. And let's see what else we get. We had another question. It says, do you want to retry to find proper union column types with fuzzy test? We have the target URL appears to have 4 columns in the query. Order by technique appears to be usable, so on and so forth. I guess I'll just retry this one more time, but if that ends up not being something, then we'll go through it. Injection not exploitable with null values. Do you want to try with the random integer value for option? And that was the one that we also want to say yes to. And let me make sure I actually click yes for this. And then it says injection not exploitable with null values. Do you want to try it with a random integer? I think I did that. Didn't I just do that? Yes. Okay. And let's see. And there we go. We arrived at get parameter email is vulnerable. Do you want to keep testing? So we're going to say no to this one based on what we got. And there we go. We have available databases, AI, information schema, MySQL, performance schema, PHP MyAdmin, and test. So that it is a total of 6 databases that we have. So the answer to the first question would be 6. Now it says, what is the name of the table available in the AI database? So now what we can do is we can essentially just now continue from where we have and just keep going deeper into this specific query that we have, just to start pulling some tables with it, right? So now it's the actual database name that I have, which is AI. And then again, same exact link, right? So everything is going to be the same. Now I'm actually going to use database for AI, and then now I'm going to pull the tables. So we will do, I think I can just go up here and then I can just modify this. So instead of doing DBS right here, I can do D, and then that's going to be AI, and then we will do tables like that. So that's what the full command is going to look like. And just remember, again, the URL needs to be inside of the quotation to make sure that that question mark doesn't mess us up or anything like that. So now we're going to do SQLMap, and then we're going to have the URL, then we're going to do --D, and then AI is going to be the table, or the database, excuse me, and we're going to do --tables, and then I'm still going to do level 5 just to make that run. So what do we have here? Now it says no such option --D. Oh yeah, so it's supposed to be just one -D. So no 2 dashes for this, and let's run that. And so it says we have user as one of our tables that is available for the AI. So what does this say here? What is the name of the table? It's going to be user. Now, what is the password of the email test@chat AI? So now we're going to expand on this, and it's going to be -D AI and then -T user, and then we're going to do dump --dump. So that was the command. So there's the response. So just to show you the query, we have SQLMap-U, we give it the full URL, we do -D AI -T user, and then we did --dump, and then I still kept the level 5. And there we got. So we got one ID, which is the test@chat AI created on here, and this is their password. So we're going to copy that and come over here and paste that, and we are officially done with our SQL map. And that was it. I mean, that was honestly, it was pretty fun, not hard at all. So I need to generate a badge for this, because apparently I got a badge, and it's really fun to be able to share these badges. So that is it for our specific video. The SQL map tool is very, very fun to use. It's very functional, as we just saw. The hardest part about it was to essentially make sure that I put the freaking URL inside the quotes. And apart from that, everything else was super easy to use. It's really, really crazy when you think about the fact that SQL injection can be automated like this. And as long as you know what URL you want to attack, it'll just attack it for you and then find whatever the vulnerabilities are. And then based on that, you can just run the rest of the exercises and get the databases, get the tables, get the values of the tables. Really, really crazy stuff. Like, this is a really powerful tool. I've never used SQLMap before, so I'm super excited that this actually exists. And it gives me all kinds of ideas, you know what I mean? But for the most part, I'm super excited that we actually were able to get this done. So hopefully you were able to run along this with me, and you were able to also get these results. And hopefully it was actually useful for you and you had some fun with it. If you found this video useful and you would like to get more videos like this one in the CySec101 training series, then I do encourage that you like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out, especially in CySec101. But then there's Network Plus that's coming out, and then there's also the AI integration with security tools. That's another training series that's going to come out. So there's a lot of really, really crazy stuff that's going to be coming out on this channel, and we're just going to get more and more crazy as we go into the content, because once the foundations are set, we're gonna review a lot of really, really cool concepts in cybersecurity and hacking and information technology, programming, all of that stuff. I nerd out about all of these things. So I feel like the best kind of instructor is the person who actually really enjoys talking about these things. And I literally nerd out over this kind of stuff. So I definitely enjoy it. And I very much hope that you kind of can feel that energy and you can get that so that you can go ahead and develop your skill set and have fun as we do it. So drop a comment if you have any questions about the video that we went through today, or if you just want to say hi. And of course, make sure that you like, subscribe, turn on that notification bell so that you get notified the next time that a video comes out. Drop a comment. I'm very active in the comment section. If you have any questions, if you just want to say hi, if you want to say thanks. And you can also say thanks by supporting this channel and joining Hackaholics Anonymous, the premier community for security professionals and hackers. We have 4 tiers: the supporter, agent, guardian, and master. Each tier gets their own Discord server and early access to content. The agent, guardian, and master levels get exclusive content, exclusive downloads, monthly Python automations, bug bounties, live streams with me every single month, plus so much more. And to join, you can simply click the link in the description below, or you can go to our homepage and click the join button there, or you can go to youtube.com/@HankHacksHackers/join, and you'll be able to join Hackaholics Anonymous. I hope I see you in the Discord servers. If not, I hope I see you in the comment section, and that's it. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers. If you're a network and system attacker/protector, if no one else loves you, Hank loves you. Love, peace, and chicken grease. And I'll see you in the next video later.